Hello, everybody, and welcome to your favorite 3-3 Elk podcast. Was that good? Was that a good way to throw to the Oko band? I was going for a smooth transition there. No? Okay. Anyways, welcome to Brainstorm Brewery, everybody. I'm Corbin. This week, we have a very special guest, and that is Gavin Verhey, a senior game designer and lead product architect and commander czar. Is that what we went with? Commander guru of Wizards of the Coast. So Gavin, welcome to the cast, man.
Hey everyone, excited to be here. I remember the last time I was on, I gave you all some spicy little tidbits, and I'm excited to come back and tell you more. I think I hinted at the enemy color talismans last time, right? And those came to pass.
Yes.
You did. And I don't know how, but we ended up getting to preview them. So that was really sweet.
It's almost like I'm in the preview planning meetings.
Weird. Yeah, we really appreciated that. Those were great. We did a fun video with them, and then we got Escape to the Wilds for Throne of Eldraine that we had a lot of fun with. So, yeah, we very much appreciate it. But we have Gavin here. We're going to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, I suppose, the elk in the room. The Oko bannings, all the standard bannings, get a little bit into that. And then talk about what Gavin spends most of his time working on at Wizards, which is Commander. And there is plenty of Commander news in the future. So let's get things started off with a brief introduction. I'm Corbin. I'm the content manager for Channel Fireball, which is also the sponsor of this podcast. And I'm joined by Jason and DJ. You guys want to introduce yourselves for all the people listening in for the first time?
Hey, I'm Jason. I've been on this podcast since episode 10, so I'm technically the second newest member of this podcast. I'm the content manager at EDH Rec. I write for Cool Stuff Inc., and I write for MTG Price. And yeah, that's all I do magic-wise, just those 5 things.
I am DJ Johnson at Rose of Thorns on Twitter. I buy and sell a lot of magic cards under the hashtag Card Garden and under the 95 MTG banner at most North American and European Grand Prix. I won't be at pretty much any of the European ones, but yeah, I buy and sell a lot of magic cards locally in upstate New York. And I get angry on Twitter a lot and tweet at people when I should be sorting magic cards.
Right. Mm-hmm. So Gavin, you do a lot of Wizards things, but I have to throw this out there for everyone else. It's also Qvember, is it not?
It is. It's the best time of the year, or one of the many best times of the year. One of the things about being a game designer is I love finding other ways to make games, and I love challenging myself. I'm super into challenging myself. So I'll just, find a month. I always think a month is a good arbitrary amount of time, and then just do a thing for that month. So for example, this July, I did this wild thing called Wear It All July, where I couldn't wear the same piece of clothing twice. From hats to shirts to shoes, the entire month I wore entirely different clothes. So whenever I would finish for the day, I would take my clothes, throw them in the corner, and then I'd put on something entirely new the next day. So I learned a lot about my wardrobe. I learned a lot about how many pairs of shoes I own. Holy smokes, I own
30
pairs of shoes.
30 apparently.
You currently own more shoes than I've ever owned in my life. Literally. I'm 25 years old. I think I've owned maybe 1 pair of shoes per year, sometimes 2 if I'm feeling up to it.
Sick brags about growing up poor, bro.
At the beginning of July, I was like, I should just count my shoes. It might not even be possible for me. I should see if I'm going to have to make some special rule exception. Yeah. And I counted 68 pairs of shoes. Jeez. And I was like, that's a lot of shoes. Anyway, so I did that this year as for myself. But something I've run on Facebook every November is called Qvember. This is the 6th year running. People still like it, so I keep doing it. And it's every day I just ask a question. It can range from ridiculous to useful to something else. And they're all interesting thought-bending questions. And usually, about 100 to 200. Sometimes if it's a really good thread, 300 or 400 people reply. And it's pretty fun. I just see what people's answers are.
Yeah, it's great. I love following along with them every.
It's not magic.
Try to stay off Facebook these days, so yeah, it's really cool. I don't know.
I will say a lot of people message me and they're like, "Gavin, you are the reason I stay on Facebook," and I'm like, "Man, I got to get that Zuckerberg guy to cut me a check. Like, what's going on here?"
That's a lot of pressure, man.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's really fun. All right, so let's move on then. Let's talk about the bands. There were a lot of bands over the course of the past few weeks. Now, the Pioneer bands we all know about and sort of understand it's a new format, but the bombshell dropped. We had Field of the Dead band. Now we have Oko, Veil of Summer, and Once Upon a Time band in Standard. Now, and I know you're not a member of the play design team, so this isn't necessarily your your specific purview. But can you speak just a little bit about how Wizards reaches these decisions and sort of the thought processes and the things that that have to be considered going into it?
That's Corbin's way of saying we know this isn't your fault personally, but what the hell, man?
Yeah, tell us who to blame. Tell us who I'm selling my pitchforks to, and
Well, you're gonna blame people for this. I think most people are pretty happy about it, right?
I'm not that mad.
Well,
this is better for Standard.
I mean, happy about the bands, not happy they were printed in the first place, maybe. But.
exactly. Well, that was I pitched this at the Mythic Championship to everyone from Wizards I saw. I don't want Oko banned. I want Oko unprinted. Just a buyback program, please.
Right.
It turns out that wasn't feasible in 2019.
First of all, I think for all the listeners' context, I'm not on the play design team. I focus more on new product development and commander stuff and game design. And I've been traveling a ton in the past month. So I've barely been in the office. It actually took forever to schedule this episode. My fun Gavin statistic is as of the beginning of October, my next weekend in Seattle is in February. So that should give you an idea of what my schedule is like. It's pretty nutso.
That's pretty crazy.
So I've been in the office a grand total of 4 days so far this month. And so I can't speak a ton to exactly what happened in the meeting, just to say that up front. With that said, I haven't on the emails. I haven't talked with a lot of people, and obviously I talk a lot on social media and get pinged about this stuff. Here's the thing: we've been trying to push things a little bit. Looking back at like Ixalan Year of Magic, we didn't take a lot of risks with our cards, and people didn't really enjoy it as much as they could have otherwise. The decks were pretty safe, and not a lot of the cards were exciting people, and so we made a conscious effort to power things up a little bit. And I think we might have moved too fast, too quickly, and I think Guilds of Ravnica went pretty well, the Ravnica stuff, but then War of the Spark into the core set, which is maybe the most powerful core set we've ever made. At least in recent years, and into Eldraine, we added a ton of power into the format and took risks on some cards. Like Oko is a big risk, but it's a marquee planeswalker. Once Upon a Time was ended up more powerful than we thought. I'm sure. So we needed to knock a bunch of cards, and from my perspective, where I'm seated, look, we made a few bans in Standard. We banned Field of the Dead, for example. It just caused this huge Oko thing to happen. At this point, we really want to make sure we get it right. Because what we don't want to do is be like, okay, well, we'll ban Oko this time, and let's check back next month and see if green is probably still too strong and if we need to knock something from it, right? So instead, I would rather just be like, nope, let's nail it. Let's kick 3 cards out. Right. Let's really change up the format and make it radically different. And frankly, the fact that for everyone's reference, today is Monday the 18th, so the cards just got banned this morning. But from everything I'm still seeing, green is certainly still plenty playable in Standard. So the fact we can knock 3 cards out of green decks and still have green be a totally solid color to play with cards like Nissa is pretty telling. But now things like Teferi have more of a chance to shine. Other various red decks have more of a chance to shine.
I'm not sure if people want Teferi to have more of a chance to shine.
Go buy your Teferis because the one thing that could turn them into an elk just went away.
Well, what I took away from all of this sort of, because I've been very vocal on this podcast about not liking the way, the design had gone. I do understand the philosophy behind pushing cards and pushing the power level. People want to play with fun, with powerful cards. And I think that's all fine. I think that I'd rather, chances be taken and then have them corrected. But I think what is interesting is that we're looking at the cards that they missed on and had to ban. There's a lot of cards that were pushed and that are powerful that at least so far have not been broken, that they didn't get wrong. Experimental Frenzy is probably one. Fires of Invention is certainly one. Fey of Wishes. There's a lot of pushed cards that everyone's saying, oh, it should be obvious that this is broken. But the difference between something broken and something just very good is very small. So
yeah, Oko's not an inherently problematic card design. It's a card with problematic numbers.
Right, exactly. So I think what this is my biggest takeaway though since War of the Spark, because keep in mind, Ren and Six was also banned in Legacy today, and Narset was restricted in Vintage.
That's okay because
It's
Legacy was banned as a format. But
yeah, pretty much. But I mean, my takeaway from all of this experimenting with Planeswalkers that's gone on over the past 6 months is that Planeswalkers are already snowbally, and the Planeswalkers with static abilities that are positives for your team, like say +1/+0 or lifelink or whatever, that sort of stuff, those all turned out, I think, very well. It's the Planeswalkers with prison effects, whether that's Teferi or, I mean, really Oko turning things into Elks for a plus basically turned into a prison effect. Karn, those sort of things. Those are the planeswalkers that seem to lead to a lot of unfun moments. So, I'm hopeful that moving forward, there's certainly, I think Wizards has shown that they learn a lot of the lessons. So, I mean, Gavin, how do people in the building sort of interact with the feedback? I mean, it's a lot of just complaining, but how do you turn what people are saying angrily on the internet into sort of viable feedback to help improve things moving forward?
Well, yeah, and first and foremost, I get asked a lot, Gavin, how do you deal with being sent all this feedback, especially when a lot of it is people complaining about it?
Right.
And what I always say is, look, I'm grateful. I'm very happy that people send me their complaints. And here's the reason why. There's a lot of games out there that never get any feedback. No, nothing positive, nothing negative, just straight nothing. They just don't get anything at all. And one of the great things about Magic is that people do send us what they think. And whenever someone sends me a point of feedback, positive or negative, what I just take it as people saying is, hey, I care about your game. Here's what I want to tell you about it. And knowing that this many people care about it and want things to be awesome is important, right? If someone's giving you criticism, for the most part, as long as it's relatively constructive criticism about a card or a format or whatever, what they're really saying is, I want to play this format. There's something I don't like about it. Can you fix it? And that's really showing a love of the game. So yeah, I get hit with feedback like that all of the time.
What's the ratio? Because you said good criticism is good, but how often do you get it? Like Reddit and Twitter are monsters in some ways, and that a lot of the time it's just like, this game sucks. Why did you do this way?
I was gonna send you positive feedback, but my password got stolen.
I mean, in general, even like harsh stuff is fine with me. The only stuff that isn't useful is like, Gavin, you're lame, go jump off a bridge. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that, and it doesn't tell me anything about Magic. What do you want me to fix? Is it because you don't like Oko? Like, that's useful. But okay, fine. So that's one thing. The other thing I think that's just really showing us is Planeswalkers are important to Magic now. They're not going anywhere. They're crucial, but 3 mana cost and 2 mana cost, in the case of Ren and 6, Planeswalkers are really dangerous because they can snowball quickly, especially when you accelerate them out. I mean, I feel like in Standard, one of the biggest problems was Gilded Goose leading into Oko. I mean, that was just really turned the game
contextually, absolutely.
And then the other is just making sure there are enough answers to Planeswalkers. We started talking about, should we make more things that can hit Planeswalkers on them? Should more removal spells have Planeswalker on them? Should all kinds of various effects also be able to hit Planeswalkers? Should there be a Necrotol for Planeswalkers? All that kind of stuff. I think you'll see some of that reflected in upcoming designs. But keep in mind, next year Magic is pretty close to done for us, so it might take a while for these things to reflect in our designs.
Yeah. So, but I mean, this is one of the things. War of the Spark. Obviously, there's a glut of Planeswalkers right now because of that was the War of the Spark storyline and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, with that said, Planeswalkers have become more and more a part of Magic over, since their creation. As far as sort of how reflected Planeswalkers are just in everything, it sounds like that's a direction we can sort of continue things to go in.
Yeah, I mean, you'll keep seeing Planeswalkers, but I think we want to be careful about a few things. One thing we're always very careful about, for example, is making sure that the best decks aren't just heavy super friends. Because when you start getting into these what we call like 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 gameplay, where the whole format is just about, hey, I play a bunch of Planeswalkers and I get more advantage than you every turn, so I guess you lose. That's not very fun. Or that also means that, okay, well, I also have to be playing all these Planeswalkers and getting advantage every turn. Because what those games just turn into is we each throw our planeswalkers and creatures at each other until we've attritioned each other out and someone has a planeswalker left, and then the game's resolved. I think planeswalkers are a lot more interesting when they're like, oh, you play a planeswalker in your control deck. It's a tactical control tool. You play Domri in the top end of your green-red, of your green-red deck or whatever. So I think looking at that is important. And then just making sure there's enough ways to interact with them. I think that's really important. Another thing about planeswalkers is, if you look at how the metagame's shooken out right now, because of how it's happened, there isn't a really good spot for a counterspell-based control deck, in part because Teferi really says, don't play a lot with counterspells.
Right.
And when
Veil
you
of
have
Summer has kind of...
that one's gone, but at least now. But that caused trouble too. And traditionally, with 4+ mana planeswalkers, a really good way to stop a planeswalker heavy strategy is just to 1-for-1 them with counter magic, because they spend 4 mana on their turn to cast Gideon or something. You're like, great, counter it.
It's it's one of the only ways. It's why, people have said they need better answers to planeswalkers, but the Elder Spell exists. I mean, that's literally as good of an answer as you can get. It's basically like planeswalkers are as if creatures had haste and you couldn't do anything until their second main phase, right? Because even if you Murderous Rider or Nissa, well, it's still possibly doubled their mana for whatever they cast immediately after the Nissa, or they've gotten a 3/3 out of it. And so the counterplay basically stops at counter spells in terms of actual fair 1-for-1s.
Exactly, right. Like if all you do is play planeswalkers and all I do is play removal spells, I'm going to die because you get a bonus after your planeswalker every time you do it. Or counter spells are pretty good answers to that.
Right.
So, we've been talking about a bunch of different stuff. I mean, there's a number of design challenges we're working on right now. With War of the Spark, the other thing is, look, War of the Spark, we did something ambitious and new. We had a bunch of planeswalkers in a set. And frankly, every time we've tried doing something new or blowing out a card type, it always seems to get us somehow, right? You're like, we've never done an artifact block before, and maybe we have done 3 artifact blocks before. It still gets us somehow. So we learned a lot of lessons from War of the Spark. That's certainly an if, but if and when we do another planeswalker themed set, I think we'll have a bunch of lessons to take into account here. It's a dangerous card type.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's like I said, most of the planeswalkers in War of the Spark are fine. There's dozens of them or whatever. But when you're designing so many, you just have to explore so much design space. It just creates more opportunity.
Yeah, and the other thing is, when we were making so many planeswalkers and they all have to have static abilities, you kind of got to reach for some of these static abilities. Because if you're making 5 planeswalkers and that's the first time you're going to use statics, well, you can pick some pretty simple things to do. But by the time you're making close to 30 planeswalkers or whatever, you were like, okay, what are my static abilities I'm going to use? And that's how you end up with some really weird stuff on cards. And that's how you end up with things like Narset too, where you have to reach into weird abilities. And with a lot of cards, we make them and we can immediately mentally comp them to something else. But the more weird abilities you use, the harder it is to comp it to an existing Magic card. And with Narset, there's not really a great existing Magic card like that. Yeah, there's a few you can name here and there, but a 3-mana card that doesn't let your opponent draw more than 1 card every turn. I mean, it's a far cry from Spirit of the Labyrinth, right? Which is a creature you can interact with. So, there were a lot of tricks, and certainly, look, War of the Spark, we would change some things if we could do it again, but it's also one of the best Magic sets of all time. I think it's one of the most successful Magic sets of all time. So, we'll have to weigh those things appropriately. And people do like playing with powerful cards. It's just we have to make sure that that's the right kind of power.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on from that and talk about something a little more upbeat. I was at Richmond, DJ and I both were, when Mystery Boosters made their big debut.
Oh my gosh,
and people at the convention center loved it. So they seemed pretty... I don't know this is something I'm sure you've you've been sitting on for a while. So, how excited were you just to get them into the world?
So excited, like so excited. So, I mean, for a bit of background on Mystery Booster to kind of set things up, Chaos Draft has always been one of my favorite Magic formats. I love Chaos Draft; it's a blast. But when I go to conventions, that's the format that I play. But one of the issues with Chaos Draft is always that you want the feeling like anything is there, except when you open a bunch of packs together, you just end up with these cards you can't play. Right? It's like, add 2 energy. And you're like, well, I'm never going to play this. Right. I have no other energy cards. Here's an infect creature. Well, I don't need this. And so by creating a ridiculously large card set and curating it a little bit, it really creates that Chaos Draft experience. to the point where it really doesn't feel stale even after a ton of drafts. Like I was out at SCG-Con this past weekend, hot on the heels of going to Richmond where the debut was, and I did I think 7 drafts at Richmond, and at SCG-Con I did another draft, and I was still seeing and playing with cards I hadn't seen or played yet in the entire format in the times that I had drafted it in person. So you can play it a ton of times, and there's so much replayability, so you get that great aspect of it. And at least for the conventions, you get this kind of goofy aspect of the playtest cards, which I love. You know, my pitch was Chaos Draft meets Future Sight, and Chaos Draft is one of my favorite formats, and Future Sight is my favorite Magic set. So you combine those two things together, and frankly, I'm kind of shocked they let me make this. The thing about Mystery Booster, is it was a real passion project. It was something that I really had a vision for, and I really loved. But it was also, because it was a passion project, it was also the kind of thing that if I walked outside and got hit by a bus, the set would just cease to exist. At least until the very late stages where it was basically on rails. Like I was the guy like, hey, we should do this. Let's do this. Hey, I got the set. We should print sometime because we're going to do this playtest card thing, etc. And that's part of the job of being a product architect. I mean, there's a lot of products that I lead where I am the person who is the driving force behind it. And with the Mystery Booster, I was the dude. And I really cared about this product, and so I just kept pitching ideas. I'll tell you a big part of how it was hard to get it to be a reality too, which is when you see the finished product, you play it, and you're like, oh, this is really fun. I understand what's going on. Things always are easy to receive when you can see what they look like. When I would go up to somebody and be like, all right, here's the deal. It's an 1,800 card Magic set. And it's going to have these hand-drawn cards with wacky abilities. It's like, what do you envision in your head? Like, you can't even conceptualize that. It doesn't make any sense. And so it really took a lot of work. But I could tell you that one of the big turning points was when we actually started getting some of the text for the playtest cards and the drawing started coming in. Like, everyone loved the playtest cards after we started to get stuff in. People were laughing and having a great time. So I'm super proud of the set. It took a while to come to fruition. It's also just a blast to play. Like, we sold out of drafts at SCG-Con. On Sunday morning, it was announced there were going to be 8 drafts left for Sunday morning at SCG-Con. That was all we had. The hall opened at 8 a.m. There was a line of people at 8 a.m. that filled up all of the rest of the drafts.
Oh, man.
So, you think what it might take to get a bunch of Magic players to wake up and show up to a tournament site at 8 a.m. And that'll tell you how excited people are about this. And I, the guy who made the set, was like considering, should I wake up at 8 a.m. to try and play this set? Or should I go to the site and pay $25 of my own dollars so I can sit down and draft this thing that I made? Like, it's that fun. So it's going to be at All Magic Fest next year. There's going to be a store version coming out in stores in a couple months. And I think you'll all love it when you get a chance to play it. It was really, truly a blast to work on.
Yeah, and what I did when I saw the playtest cards, and a lot of them as we were opening them, especially the first day, right? It was just really cool. That old school pre-release feel, like really old school, where you're just like, I never knew this existed until I held it in my hands. But I had the feeling, I looked at so many of the playtest cards, and it was just like, I guess Future Sight was at the time. I wasn't playing then, but it was sort of like unsets.
I like how you referenced the old school
cards.
pre-release. I like how you referenced the old school pre-release. Then you're like, yeah, I started playing after that happened.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there, but that's what everyone always says about it, right? Everyone who was playing then misses the old school pre-releases, and
that's my rant. Back in my day, it was a 400-person main event. The top 8 all got a box.
I mean, I gotta say, I was so happy. Like, I'll be honest, I did not fully expect to get to that pre-release and not have something leak. Like, I tried as hard as I could. We kept the file really close in. We even sent Matt Tabak out to Magic Fest Richmond as the guy to answer all the rules questions, so we didn't have to circulate a FAQ or anything early. Like, we tried as hard as we could internally to keep it a secret, but even then I was like, oh, someone's gonna open a pack somewhere. They're gonna see what's going on. And frankly, I thought it was a miracle. Like, we live in a great timeline because we got to a point where people all opened the stuff up at the same time. No one had any clue about what was inside. And I mean, you were there, Corbin, just seeing the faces of people in that room, the laughing, the excitement, people showing cards to each other. I might never see that moment replicated again in all of Magic history. And it was awesome.
Yeah, I loved it. And I want those to be real cards now. Like some of the cards that are, if you didn't go first this game, it gets a bonus or whatever. I'm just like, I want these in, well, I'd say Black Border. I want to play these cards in Standard. Like, I actually thought that those are really cool. That's a nice little design space, especially as, we sort of navigate the play draw, because there's just statistically a difference. I think that was a really cool stuff. And it's a lot of those I looked at, I was like, man, I want this to open this card in Eldraine.
Stuff like that normally has a silver border rather than a black border.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Part of my goal was designing these was super hard. So it's funny. I finally get buy off on the pitch, and I go talk to Mark Rosewater. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do a feature site. And he's like, Gavin, Feature Site was the hardest Magic set, or one of the hardest Magic sets I've ever designed. Do you know how hard it is to come up with a bunch of weird things that we don't do but aren't silver bordered? And I was like, whatever, Mark, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And of course, it was absurdly hard, right? Mark was absolutely right. And it took a lot of time and coming up with abilities that I liked that felt a little outside of what we would normally do, but not quite silver bordered, because we wanted to make. It was very important to me. This was not a silver bordered set, right? Like everything here has to actually work in Magic. And yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is weird and doesn't work in current Magic, like shuffling token time walks into your deck or whatever. But you get how it works. It was not supposed to be about like reading flavor text or high fiving people next to you or whatever. Although you will, without game mechanics telling you to, just high five people next to you because you're having a good time. And so it was really hard to design a bunch of these, but I love how they turned out. Like they are fun, they are charming. And one of my goals was so I had some category that I call like meme cards. Like the Great Designer Search 3 references. But there's a number of things in there that I'm like, I want to test this out and see what people's reactions are.
Well, I noticed it was Golgari Death Swarm GDS, Great Design Search.
Yep. Printed all over top of a blue-white card.
It was Great Designer Search 3 because the 3 and the mana cost too.
Yeah, to me, the cherry on top of that card is that it's printed on a blue-white card. The fact we got Throat Wolf in there, right?
Yeah.
All kinds of fun memes.
I didn't know about
the
Throat
unicycle
Wolf.
that is a... I noticed that too.
Apparently Throat Wolf is a thing. I never knew about Throat Wolf. Apparently I was massively out of the loop.
Because you started playing in like 2019.
I guess so, man.
Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, Throw Wolf is a super old Magic meme. It's basically the first Magic meme before there were memes, and it was generated from a combination of Inquest and Usenet groups of people talking about the rumored Throat Wolf, which was so powerful and it was winning tournaments. Because back then, you have to understand, especially if you're new to Magic, you didn't have the internet as we do now. It's not like all the results were aggregated. You would just hear about some guy on the East Coast winning with Triskelion in his deck or whatever. And oh yeah, Triskelion, I should play those. But there weren't deck lists being circulated, right? It was all very local communities. And so, someone started posting about rumors about this card called Throat Wolf that their cousin had opened, and there weren't even easily accessible full card lists at this point. So they're like, oh man, there's this
I bought
Throat Wolf out
that
there.
first that book that had the pictures of all the cards,
the Magic Encyclopedia, baby.
The encyclopedia or whatever. It was just like a physical picture of every Magic card.
Yeah, I bought a full IE set from a guy this year who 20x years ago or whatever, he bought it at a flea market because he didn't know what all the cards in beta did. So the best way to find out what all the cards in beta did was to buy a CE set at a flea market for $20.
What a genius.
I used to, this will tell you what kind of kid I was and explains a lot about me today. I bought those Magic Encyclopedia books, like the ones that just had pictures, as you're talking about, of all the cards from 3 blocks, say. And I have 6 of them. I still have them buried away somewhere at home. And at some point in my life, that is just what I read every night before I went to bed. I would go to bed, I would open up this book of Magic cards, and I would just start reading them and memorizing them. And then I would close it and pick it up again the next night. So I guess that says a lot about me as a person.
I mean, hey, we all did that, right? With something. I used to read the Warcraft 3 or the Warcraft 1 rules manual and their half page of lore every car ride because that was the thing that I loved.
So,
so on the playtest cards, a couple other things I'll say. Some definitely hint at things we want to do in the future. So I'm actually surprised there aren't any articles up yet about people analyzing which ones we might or might not do in the future.
Well, that sounds there might be now.
Sounds like a really fun article waiting to happen by someone out there. And then the other thing is, so I was thinking about where these would see play, because clearly they say on them not for constructed play. So how do you make cards people want to own that you can't play with anywhere. You can't play them in Standard or Modern or Pioneer or
Mhm.
Legacy, or in even like maybe your play group will let you play them in Commander or something like that, but you have to get buy-in from them. The place I thought they would have the highest chance of hitting was Cube Draft.
Yeah.
And so when I designed them with Cube in mind. So there's a lot of things in there that fill gaps. Like there's another 3-mana red deal 4 spell because there weren't a lot of those. Or there's a good black aggressive creature. And it was actually funny. I was at SCG Con over the weekend, and I was doing a panel with Justin Parnell, who's a Cube aficionado. And it'll go up online eventually. You can watch it. And at one point, I turned to him, and I'm like, hey, Justin, which cards from Mystery Booster do you think will make your cube? And unscripted, unprompted, he pulls out his badge for the event, flips it over, grabs a sticky note from the other side, and is like, here's a list of all the cards I'm looking for. They're going to hit my cube. And there were like 19 or something in there. There was a really long list.
Wow.
So Cube aficionados, there's good stuff in here for you.
Okay, well, we have to settle this bet then. DJ and Jason bet that we knew mystery boosters were coming, but we didn't know what they were, and they decided they were going to make a wager on it. So you guys want to disclose the terms of that, and we can ask Gavin to settle it for us?
Yeah, sure thing. DJ said he thought the mystery boosters would be a supplemental product that would get some reprints for Commander, and I said that the timing made me think it was Pioneer themed or not strictly Commander.
Okay, so what's the and the wager here is the one who is wrong has to eat a hot gummy. Is that correct?
9 million Scovilles.
Will
It's
Nitro.
a lot of Scovilles.
Now, how much is a single Scoville? Do we have like a reference for the listeners out there?
It's like a unit of capsaicin. So like a jalapeno pepper is a couple thousand maybe. Like a Carolina Reaper is like 1 million. So this is 9 times hotter than a Carolina Reaper pepper.
No, it's no big deal.
Allegedly, because I've been reading Amazon reviews, Jason's been watching YouTube videos, and they're always split 50-50. Half of the people are like, oh, I could eat a pack of these. I'm mad there was only one. And then half the people are like, yeah, my kid had diarrhea for 3 days and I took him to the ER. Like, it's very, there's no middle ground. There's zero any sort of like 50-50. It was fine. It was pretty hot, but it's either like, oh, I nearly died, or oh, give me 50.
So
Sounds to me like a real survival of the fittest situation, right? All the people who ate them and died aren't posting on Amazon reviews, so only the
That's
ones who made
probably
it out
true.
alive are posting.
That's probably true. Okay, so verdict then. It kind of sounds like this is not aimed at Commander. This was aimed at Cube.
Oh,
DJ.
but that's where you're wrong. So
Oh.
the reprints. So those cards are mostly aimed at Cube, although there are some Commander shots in there. But the reprints I selected for this set are largely aimed at Commander. So of course it's a set of like 1,800 Magic cards.
Yeah, I mean, I saw
A lot
Riesler
of them.
redeem, Teferi's Protection, Expropriate, Mana Crypt, and all those on the list, and I felt pretty content about my position in this.
Yeah, there's a
I
ton of
think
like.
you're both supposed to eat them.
Yeah, so I that's what I was gonna say. I think you unfortunately made a wager that I found a loophole through. There's a ton of Commander stuff in here, but there's also a huge element of the set that is not focused at Commander. So I think you both need to eat one of these gummy bears.
Oh, what?
I mean,
That's brutal.
it does seem fair.
Now, if you want to chicken out, I'll say you can each eat half a gummy bear. I mean, that seems
It doesn't
fair.
matter. If you eat half a gummy bear, you're getting 9 million Scovilles in your mouth. If you eat a whole gummy bear, you're getting 9 million Scovilles. It's like only pepper spray him a little. It's like getting a little bit of herpes.
Jason,
Like,
why are you trying to wager your way out of a Deus Ex Machina here? Like, I'll take any sort of.
if you would eat half a gummy bear, DJ, go to town, man. Eat an ear. It doesn't matter. You're still gonna have diarrhea for 3 days.
I feel like I get to be John Hodgman on the Judge John Hodgman podcast right now. But yes, I believe you should both eat the gummy
What are you,
bears.
King Solomon? Cut the gummy bear in half and you both eat half.
Wow, that was quality throwback reference there, Jason.
It's like,
What, to the
no, I don't want to
Bible?
eat it if it's cut
To
in
the-
half. And he's
to the
like,
yes,
literal
to the
Bible,
Bible.
Corbin.
Yes, that's about as far back as you can get with the references.
Actually,
that was
if
solid.
you two if you two could meet up in person in Lady and the Tramp, the gummy bear, I'd really appreciate it.
That's
All
a
right,
fate
so-
worse than diarrhea for 3 days.
End of the podcast.
I'm a
then,
real good kisser. I don't think that's very
End of the
terrible.
podcast. We're making it happen. We're not going to make them do it right now because I need them to actually be able to talk for the rest of this podcast. So, but at the end of the cast tonight, stick around, everybody. It's happening.
All right. Speaking of the world's hottest and capsaicin, I have from a perspective that is different than almost every other person who has opened these mystery boosters, I have some questions.
Yes, ask me your questions.
So my job, my role in life, my get that bread is a lot of sorting and processing and purchasing and selling Magic cards. And as somebody who does that, I would like to inquire as to the logistics of making cards virtually identical, except for that tiny little stamp.
What's the question?
Just why? Like, as somebody who set sorts cards and somebody who will be sending out these cards for players to purchase, and then these players being confused and or disoriented as to, oh, I thought I ordered this version, but there's a time. Is this a fake? Because mine doesn't have this little there's going to be so many people. So many people.
But
That
TJ,
wasn't
how
a
cool is
question.
it? Yeah, that was not a question. This is just
My
DJ
question
Salt.
is why make them like that? Why
because
not just...
they have the original set symbols and it's so cool. I'll let Kevin actually answer, but I love it. I love that you open the cards and they have the original set symbols.
So there's a couple things going on here. The first and foremost, for anyone listening, I wrote a great article talking. I guess I just call it an article great. Hey, I wrote an article. I think it's pretty great. Talking about the history of how this product came to be and all the details and decisions behind it, which will probably be linked in the show notes or something, so you can go check it out.
Yep, JJ, do that thing. Do the thing.
It's called Unraveling the Mystery Booster. But so here's the deal. When we set out to make this set, one of the conditions was, so every card that we make, no matter if it's for a mainline set like Throne of Eldraine or an all reprint set like a Commander Anthology, even though design might do various amounts of work, like a reprint card is no work and a new card is a lot of work, there's a whole editing and processing and layout team that has to do the same amount of work. So for example, when we make a Commander Anthology product, even though it takes design like, an hour to select which decks they want to use,
right?
It takes the entire editing and back-end team of Magic the same amount of time as a full set of Commander decks to do. And this is their full-time job.
Wow. So to add the to add like the set symbol for Commander Anthology to like Rakdos Signet and all that?
It's to do that. It's to retemplate cards. It's to check in on flavor text. It's to relay them out. Yep. It's to make sure that they're typeset for printing, like to make sure that the printing proofs come back okay. Like these are many people's full-time job. You never hear about them.
Right. Yeah.
They're kind of the unsung heroes of Magic. And so when I pitched, I want to do this Chaos Draft set for this thing. Everyone's like, Gavin, it can't be done. The reason we can't do sets that big is it would blow up our entire process. If you try and shove, at the time, by the way, when I started off, this set was like 500 cards. And they're like, yeah, Gavin, you can't just shove a 500 card set through. That'll blow up everything. That's impossible. Can't be done. And so I dug a little bit, and what we realized is, okay, wait a second. What if we know that there are files that do work, though? These are the files that we've already created and sent off. So theoretically, if we take files that we've already used, that'll take no additional work. And although everyone was initially very dubious when I told them this claim, I vetted it all the way through, and it's one of those things that everyone was like surprisingly happy by. They're like, wow, I didn't think that would actually be true, but here we are. And so that's why when Mark Globus came to me and said, hey, I would like 1,694 cards for your set, when I pitched it back to people, I was sure they're going to tell me no. And instead they're like, well, if you're not making any new assets, go for it, I guess, which was bananas, by the way. That conversation blew my mind when I asked for a set that was 1,700 Magic cards, and they were like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. Because normally that would be a huge issue. So the reason why they're all the original printings, and with this tiny modification, we were able to add the modification in through a special printing process that had to be uniform across all cards. Because it was really important that people knew that they were different. For example, if you had an old version of a card, I didn't want you to not know where your card came from. That's kind of a weird thing for collectors.
That's bad.
So basically, the only way we can make this set was to do that.
I'm content with that answer.
That was an unplanned, nice insight.
And the flip side of that is, as we started doing it, everyone actually found it super cool. Because you open up a pack and it really does feel like chaos. You like have a Commander 14 card and a card in an old card frame, and like over here is something from like modern, and it's like you get this weird smorgasbord of cards in your pack that really does lend to a Chaos Draft feel. And I know for me especially, opening up a modern day pack and seeing an old frame card in there puts a big smile on my face. So I was really happy we were able to do that. And it let us do some pretty cool stuff. Now there were some restrictions. For example, we couldn't go before Mirage, and there were actually a few random sets that were just missing. Sorry, not entire sets, but it's very specific subsets of certain sets. Like when I went to go pull stuff from Mirage Block, like there were just certain colors or certain cards that just weren't there. But in general, a lot of stuff was there, and we could grab
really
it.
Weird.
So, and at that point, once we knew this is what we were doing, we kind of went ham wild. We're like, okay, can we get like every Magic set in here or whatever? So, there's, one of my favorite additions is Brimstone Dragon from Portal, which has like the sword and shield next to his power toughness box, and it says Brimstone Dragon is unaffected by summoning sickness, right? Yeah. And I just think stuff like that is really cool nods. So that's the reason why they appear as they do. The reason for the set size, by the way, if I don't know how many of you have seen this, but it's actually totally nuts. So the set is, I asked Globus, who was working on choosing the cards for the set, how many cards he wanted, and he told me 1,694. I looked at him kind of stunned, and I'm like, why? He's like, no, exactly 1,694.
Yeah, so my guess was that it was going to be 1993. When you said 1,000 to 2,000, my guess was like it's going to be 1,993 cards.
Right, so there are a lot of good guesses, right? I gave the hint between 1 and 2,000 cards. A lot of good guesses. But the reason for this number in particular was what that number means is if you take all 14 slots in a booster pack, excluding the playtest cards for a moment, and you put every card in its own spot, so you basically, every card has a unique sheet, because our sheets are 121 cards apiece. That meant that every slot in the booster pack could have its own sheet, which is wild, right? So for example, you open up a booster pack of Mystery Booster. You look at the first white common in your pack. That is one of 121 different white commons that will only ever show up in that slot. You go to the next slot behind that. There is going to be a white common that is a 121 different possible white commons for that slot. So it's nuts how many you can draft this thing so many times and never even see the same cards. It's crazy.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, and people, I know a lot of people started to look at, what kind of things you open up with this pack. But the way that every pack is broken down is you get 2 white commons or uncommons, 2 blue commons or uncommons, and you repeat that all the way down the line for the 5 colors, noting that some things are on sheets as the commonality that they were printed at then. So, for example, Demonic Tutor is on the black common and uncommon sheet, one of the two. So you can just open that up as a common or uncommon sometimes. And, there's a ton of uncommons to give it a lot of power. So there's, Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile and all that good stuff. Okay, so you repeat that 10 times. Then you get a common or uncommon land, a land or artifact. You get a common or uncommon multicolored card. You get an old frame magic card, which is about a rare half the time, so that's already pretty exciting. You get a guaranteed rare mythic that has the security stamp, so it's from M15 forward, and then you get a playtest card. So every pack, you're like guaranteed rare mythic plus playtest card. About half the time, you're getting another rare on top of that, plus like you'll just open up, Demonic Tutor sometimes in your packs. These packs are chock full of goodness, so opening these is real good stuff. And then when we get to the retail version, which has a foil card, a foil sheet, instead of those playtest cards, the excitement is going to go up even higher, I think. So you will want to own these.
So one of the interesting things you brought up there is the foil card versus the playtest card. I mean, the playtest card, as we know, is a convention center, as a convention exclusive, and a lot of the internet was disappointed that they aren't going to be able to buy those at their store because they're not going to be able to get out to a Magic Fest. Although obviously we think they should. But they were a little disappointed that they're going to get not have a chance of those playtest cards, but they are going to have the foils. Was that always a part of the plan of the product?
Okay, so I'm going to say 2 things, and then I'm going to tell a story. No, I'm going to tell a story, and then I'm going to say 2 things. So when Mystery Booster began, here it started in a very humble beginnings, which is the convention team came to us and said, hey, we would really like a product that is exclusive for conventions. And the reason why I went to Chaos Draft is it's something that I love doing at conventions. Conventions were already running it, and it would take what we thought at the time relatively low effort to pull off. Like, hey, okay, give conventions a product, but Chaos Draft will be fun. Turns out it took a lot more effort than we thought. But so I'm working on this Chaos Draft set, and I've come up with the playtest card idea, and we're rolling with it. And this guy named Ken Troop, who's one of the directors of game design, pulls me aside, and he's like, look, if you're making something that you think is going to be awesome, then we should make sure that everyone can play the awesome format. And if you think it's not going to be awesome enough that everyone will want to play it, then we shouldn't make it. I thought that was a really good point, right? If we just made a convention version of this product and no other version of this product, then either it would suck and no one would want to do it, or stores around the world would be like, why can't we do this?
Right.
So we got into me, him, Aaron, the organized play team, and kind of what we decided were a couple things. The first is that it was important to conventions that they still had some exclusive element to the product, but that they didn't need to be the whole product. And that's why we were like, okay, we could carve off, for example, these playtest cards for you. But the other really big thing that I thought Aaron Forsyth really pointed out well was twofold. First of all, we don't know how these playtest cards are going to be received. It's very possible that everyone will love them, which is great. We live in that universe. But it's equally as possible that we could have lived in a universe where we launch them and everyone opens them and they're like, why'd you give me a card I can't do anything with in my booster packs? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's as good as a token. You gave me an ad card in your pack that it doesn't even have an advertisement on it. What are you doing to me? And so we didn't know how players were going to receive them. So we wanted to be conscientious of that. And second of all, if you go to a game store and you buy a booster pack, you expect, and you might not know a lot about Magic. You might just be coming in for your weekly purchase. Here, there's a new set on the shelves. You pick up, you get a playtest card in it. And at game stores, you're expected to be able to pick up cards you can put into your Magic decks. You kind of know what you're getting into. Where at conventions, if you enter into a mystery booster event, you've opted in. You know what's going on. You're at a Magic Fest, right? You know about this playtest card thing. You're gonna be into it. Where at a store, you might not be as into it as much. So that's a few things that I think led into making this decision. And as someone who worked, so the way that we kind of divvied up the set is Mark Globus did most of the work selecting the reprints for the set and designing the set. I did some work on the tail end of it, tweaking a few things, but he did the majority of work on it. I cut a few cards from it that I was like, Mark, really no. He put Pack Rat in the set, for example, and I was like, no, Mark, no one ever wants to play against Pack Rat. Please don't put that in there. Because I mean, it was like, oh, it's funny. Sometimes people open up Pack Rat and you get this, you remember this thing, and I was just like, yeah, but that's not a memory people want to have. So I made a few tweaks to his file, and also Mark actually left the company after the handoff. Just he had other things he wanted to go do. So when it came to making final tweaks, when we found out
because he wanted to put Pack
you
Rat
cut,
in the set,
yeah,
right?
you cut his Pack Rat.
No. Mark is great. Mark is great and wonderful. He was able to retire, so he's off, living the great retired life. And I made a few tweaks to it. There are a few cards, for example, that he wanted to put in that we couldn't get in, like one of his favorite cards of all time. Sadly, we had to cut, which was Erratic Portal, and that was, I felt bad because it was after he had left Wizards, and we had to cut it because it turns out we just didn't have the file for Erratic Portal anywhere. So I put in Crystal Shard to replace it as a nod to Erratic Portal.
I've got a heavily played copy of Erratic Portal if you just want to slap that on the scanner real quick. I've got like I will get you to shuffle and play my Gonti deck one day.
Yeah, at some event. So anyway, so he did that. But anyway, I was in charge of the playtest cards. So I designed the vast majority of the playtest cards myself. So I'm super happy people love them. To me, it's like, oh, people love my work. That's great. But, we didn't know what world we're going to live in. The other thing is about all this that I want to mention is that right now the world is, they know there's playtest cards and they know what all those playtest cards are. There's a foil sheet, but you don't know what all the foil sheet cards are. And so it's very easy to compare, like, hey, here's the thing that I know and love versus the mystery thing that I don't know anything about. And look, I'm not saying that the foil sheet is the most bananas nuts thing we've ever printed. It's not like it's just, it's full of everything you could ever want as a Magic player.
Where's all my foil Moxes and my foil Black Lotuses and my foil Time Twisters?
Right. So there's some restraint on it. But there is a lot of good stuff on there. Especially I chose cards that I think Commander players will want to own. Because
if that really badly needed a reprint, it might not have been appropriate for the Commander precons.
Yeah, kind of the way I chose looking at a lot of the reprints for Mystery Booster is, look, there's a lot of cards that need reprints, and there's a lot of cards that can carry sets on their own. A lot of things that will carry an entire product. Like if we released a product that had all the fetch lands in it, like that'll carry a product on its own. Right. There's a ton of cards that can't carry a product on their own, but people need reprints of. And this was a great place to kind of just put a ton of those cards in there. And that's why in the main set you see things like Expropriate, Elish Norn, Bloom Tender, Mana Crypt, Selvala. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of all these Commander cards and some Modern cards too. The players need to have access to. So that's what a lot of these things are. I mean, you will find stuff in there that you want to own, or that many players will want to own. So I'll go ahead and say that now.
Yeah, well,
And
that's good to hear.
hopefully you're excited when it comes out. I can say that I'm not going to say what any cards are, but I can say that there's a lot of cards for Commander, that there's a ton of rares. I think you get a rare. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I think you get a foil rare about half the time. So maybe a little under half the time, but still a lot of packs you're going to open up, and you're going to have 3 rares. You're going to have a rare from the M15 sheet, you're going to have a rare in the old card frame, and you're going to have a foil rare staring back at you. And so a lot of them are chosen for Commander. And then there's a couple cards I chose for Modern as well that are kind of wacky. Another thing I'll say, I haven't said this anywhere yet, but I guess I'll say this to you guys first. This
is the headline. This is what we get to put in like the BuzzFeed font in the title of the video. Number 8 will shock you.
Yeah. So the playtest cards, as we know, are all kind of wacky things. So on this sheet, I wanted to nod to that a little bit. So there are not all the cards, but there are a number of cards on this sheet that specifically are just head scratchers. Like, we made what? Like, whoa, what is on this thing? This Magic card exists, right? And so there's a few things on there that I think will inspire that future sighty feel. And these aren't just all like cards Gavin threw on there because he thought they were memes. Like, some of them are cards that get played in Modern and are kind of head scratcher cards. So yeah, you just have to wait and see what they are.
I mean, I'm looking forward to that. That product comes out in March. Is that correct?
March 13th, I think. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
I have one more question about mystery booster cards.
Yes.
So one of the concerns, I mean, I love the product. I have yet to get to draft it just because I work events and I've just had a lot of stuff going on the past week and a half or so. But I do really want to draft the product. But one of the primary concerns I did have in Richmond while I was buying the cards is that the old border cards specifically, just they feel almost like not real Magic cards, and I know that term gets thrown around a lot with like Amonkhet Invocations and Masterpieces and playtest card. Like, a lot of these are quote not real Magic cards, but like the old border cards specifically, like the Carpet of Flowers, the Rhystic Studies, the Weather Wayfarers, they just don't even feel like real Magic cards. They just the printing differences from back in the old school days.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the card stock, I mean, we wrote an article about this somewhat recently.
The card stock and the font and the text on the cards, yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the card stock, we wrote an article about this recently where we did end up changing over some of our card stock. So the cards are going to feel different than how they were originally printed, just because we changed our card stock slightly. Now that you can compare that to another card from Mystery Booster or another card from a current set, and you should feel something similar. And there's an article that you can link to with more information about this. Mm-hmm. As far as the font goes, all that stuff should be the same. Like, we took the files and just printed them straight up. The thing that I've noticed the most being different is they look almost like brightened or enhanced a little bit, and that's just because our printing quality is higher than it was back then. So the files came out a little brighter than you're used to. This is most evident to me looking at like the Mercadian Masks cards. Like the Richton Footpad, I think, is in there as one example. So, yeah, it's a thing you're gonna have to keep an eye on. But it's just what happens when you do this treatment to things. And frankly, I think it's kind of neat. Like, the cards look better than ever to me. Like, when I open a Richton Footpad, I'm like, yeah, this looks like an awesome Richton Footpad. Super cool. So, keep your wits about you. But that's just how this thing's printed.
Yeah, it's not really a concern I personally have. It's just one of those things that when I sell the card, I have a higher than expected chance of somebody being like, "Why'd you send me a fake Carpet of Flowers?"
Yeah, I mean that's the card stock's gone through a lot of changes over the years, right? That was a whole thing a few years ago. That I think hopefully is I mean they feel a little different, but they play the same, and they come out of the mystery booster. So moving on to Commander, something you know a lot about and spend a lot of time on, Gavin. Next year is sort of primed to be the year of Commander.
That's right, baby. It's time.
Now, is that something you're just going to load up on 2020 and then maybe pump the brakes a little bit, or is this something that Commander players can expect to have happen to their wallets every year?
I want 2020 to be a great year for Commander, and 2021 to be a great year for Commander, and all the years after that to be a great year for Commander. Like, we are revving up for 2020 to be big, but I'm hoping that 2020 becomes I mean, 2020's got a lot, admittedly, but I'm hoping that over time, the kind of cadence we're seeing in 2020 becomes something like the new normal. Where you've got you got a bunch of Commander releases, you've got a Commander focused booster set. Now, I'm not saying we're going to do a Commander Legends every single year, but I think we could do a set that is focused on Commander every year. For example, you could do I'm going to say these words. I'm not saying it's coming, okay? Because I know a lot of people get very excited. But you could do like a Battle Bond 2, and that would also have a ton of cards for Commander players in it, despite not being an explicitly Commander set, right? So I think that is something that we want to move to eventually, is having a social play focused set, having a bunch of Commander pre-constructed products, all this, because Commander is one of, if not the biggest format in all of Magic potentially. Let's make stuff for them. If you look,
So
at
you're saying-
I kind of like when you do something clever where you're like, here's a new thing that's unique, and when you're done, you will have a bunch of cards left over that you can play in Commander. I really like when you do that, because you kind of accomplish two things. It's like, well, here's the thing you can do a couple times. You'll draft it a few times. It'll be fun. And when you're done, you aren't left with a bunch of conspiracies. You're left with, EDH staples.
well, and Commander Legends, first of all, Commander Legends is like my baby. By the time it comes out, it'll have been about 6 years since I first conceived of it. So it's been a really, 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 really long time making for me.
That is the set that I thought the mystery boosters were going to be. That is what I called for the gummy. I was like, this is going to be a Commander-focused draftable set. It's going to have a lot of Commander cards in it. It'll be a Commander draft, because booster packs have to be able to be drafted. So that's the mystery booster. It's the big reveal, draftable Commanders. I was
running to Walmart to buy those Nekasar decks to get the True Name Nemesis back when you were planning to make this set. I was like, wow, I think Commander might be a real thing financially.
Let me tell you, every time in the past several years, someone's come up to me and been like, "Hey, Gavin, have you ever considered a draft and Commander set?" And I just have to kind of like smile and be like, "Oh, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, a draft, that sounds so smart." It's been hard to keep the lid on, so I'm so excited to finally talk about it. And to what you're talking about, drafting Commander is really fun and actually feels a little different from normal Commander in a way that I think even people who don't traditionally like Commander might really enjoy it. Like, if you like Conspiracy, you will, I think, really like Commander Legends, even if you're not a Commander player. And I'm not going to totally get into how it all works yet, but the big reason for me why this is true is, so when you're playing a normal game of Commander, when I bring a deck and you all bring decks, we just sit down and play. As we all know, there's just kind of the social contract, right, of what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. We have to make sure our decks are all at the same power level, whatever. And it's important. That's really important to make sure you have
how many food chains are in the decks right now? How many food chains we got? How many proshes?
Right, exactly. How strong are our decks? And with Commander Legends, one of the really fun things to me, as someone who has a competitive background and also now plays a lot of Commander, is you don't have that. You draft, and if someone has a bananas deck, well, guess whose fault that is? It's the people who are drafting with them. And so you sit down and you play. And if you want to, you don't have to play this way, but if you want to, you can be a little more cutthroat. You can be a little more no holds barred, because you don't, like, the social contract is you sat down and you drafted, you opened all the stuff that you got to take. So I enjoy that aspect of it a lot. It really feels like a Conspiracy variant to me in a lot of ways. And of course, if you just want to play Commander, like, it's great. It gives you a ton of new Commander cards, and you can always just bust it for Commander stuff. You don't have to draft it. The draft is just another fun way you can do it. But if we're going to give you a Commander-focused set, might as well let you draft it too,
Yeah, so the other big Commander news, and it's not 2020, but Command Fest exists, and it's a thing that has happened. What's the story behind that? Is that something you really had a part of, or is that, strictly an events thing, or what?
Yeah, no. So here's kind of how it all went down. So for a very long time, as the commander architect at Wizards, I've thought we could have a big event. Like, in Magic's history, we've had a lot of large events, but they've all been competitive events, right? They've been people coming to play competitive Magic, and with the size of Commander, it's like, I know that there's more we could do here. So the Command Zone at Vegas was kind of the big push. I saw the community pushing for it and thought, hey, we could really make something out of this. So I worked with Channel Fireball. Me and the events team worked with Channel Fireball to make this happen. It was a great effort on all three sides, and that was really the first big showing of how much we could do here. We sold over 1,000 seats at the Command Zone. And so I wanted to do a thing like Command Fest for a while. People had talked about doing things like Command Fest for a while, and we came back after that and started chatting. And we're like, hey, you think we could do it this year? And we talked about it for a little bit, and we were able to pull some off for this year. I would call these almost proto-command fests in the sense that we came up with them pretty quickly, and we're kind of a trial run for a larger program we want to roll out to see, hey, can this thing be successful? And turns out the answer is yes. The first two capped. The third one isn't happening until next month in December, but I'm pretty sure it's going to cap too, or at least have a huge turnout. So while we haven't announced any yet, I would be surprised if they weren't Command Fest next year.
Well, yeah, I saw the announcement, and I was talking to my boss about scheduling and whether or not we were doing them, and I was like, oh yeah, they announced them for a year in advance. That gives us enough time to, oh, they're like next month. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'll tell you personally.
What is the pitch to somebody who plays...
My funny story. I'll tell you personally, my funny story is...
yeah, go ahead.
They're like planning all the Command Fest, the team is, and I'm working with them to plan it on it. And they're like, here are the dates we're thinking about. And I look at them, I look at the organized play team in the eye, and I'm like, here's the deal. Don't plan this around me, but if you choose these 3 dates, I can't make any of them. Now don't plan around me, though. And they looked at me, and they're like, so of course, I can't make any of them because I just had stuff already scheduled when they got planned, which is kind of a bummer because I wish I could make it out. But the good news is if there's more next year, I'm sure I'll be at them. And
yeah,
it's been a blast.
They seem like they're really cool. Like I didn't get to go to any of them this year, but I'm hoping to make it to one next year. But so what's the pitch to somebody who says, well, I can go to the GP and play Commander with my friends on a side table, or I can stay at home and play Commander with my friends. What's the pitch to really get people out? I mean, obviously it worked, right? There was 1,000 people at the event or at Vegas, and it sold. They capped out. But what is, you think, the part that's really bringing people to the gathering aspect of it?
Well, Magic is a social game at its core, or it can be, especially for Commander players. And so there's a few things going on. First of all, it's a chance to show up, meet new great people, including some people who are luminaries of the Magic community. I think they do a lot to help out with this stuff, having people like Sheldon and Jimmy and Josh there. It's a chance to just play a lot of Commander. Like, might know your play group, but what does another game? What does another play group have? And have some great, memorable games. It's also a chance to kind of put all the Commander stuff you love in one place. So there are people, people showing off all kinds of great Commander cards that they've collected, and there are cool versions of decks and ways to obtain, to trade for Commander cards that you want to own. And then to top it all off, one of the things we did is, you'll notice we gave all 3 of the first Command Fests to 3 different tournament organizers. And it's not on accident. We gave 1 to Channel Fireball, 1 to Pastimes, and 1 to Star City Games. And it's been great seeing what each of them has brought to the table and kind of seeing what's been working and what hasn't. And so to see things like, for example, panels happening, which are add more of a festival atmosphere. Like, I want to go and check this thing out. Let's see what's happening on these panels. To have these personalities flown out there, to have, organized stuff. Like, to have, not just Commander being played, but also, hey, I can do a Battle Bond draft, or I can play in a social kind of draft experience. I think that's really cool, and it's been really, really neat to see it all come together and have it feel like a relaxed, casual affair where people are just laughing and having fun. And I think it's been a huge hit.
Yeah, they seem great. I mean, Channel Fireball even streamed the first one, which was pretty cool.
Right, yeah, you got to see people playing decks around, and for me. So before I say what I'm about to say, I want to say that I love competitive Magic. I have a competitive Magic background. I played on the Pro Tour. One of my favorite, if I could play competitive Magic, I still would. Anytime I have the chance to play in a competitive tournament, I love doing it. I love the adrenaline. I love building decks, all that kind of stuff.
Is there a butt coming?
There's a butt coming.
The thing I have to say is that when you go to a competitive Magic tournament, what you see are a lot of people staring across the table from each other with eyes that look like they're trying to kill each other, right? If you are an outsider and you walk into a competitive Magic tournament, it does not look like fun is happening here. I know it's fun, and you know it's fun, because we're like dream battling in a Nightmare on Elm Street way, like over these like subtle tactical plays of like, oh no, you tapped your land wrong, or I held up 4 spike for just the right moment and got you. And we're having a blast doing this. But to the outsider, it looks like we're all in deep pain and agony. Where what I love about Commander is looking around a Command Fest, or even going through the command zones and people play, there's just smiles and laughing, and people are having a good time, or they're catching up about lives on other people's turns and stuff like that. And it really puts a good face of Magic forward, and it kind of gives us a reason to outwardly express things that we normally feel that when we're playing competitive Magic. Because once again, when you're playing competitive Magic, there's stuff on the line. You're trying to be as emotionless as possible. You don't want to give
If I
anything away.
blink, he'll know I have the counterspell.
Right. Where on the inside you might be enthused and excited, that gets punished by playing competitive Magic. Where when you're at a commander table and you make a sweet play, your friends will high five you, you'll tell a story about it, whatever, and it just encourages this smiling and having fun. And I love that it gets to show that off to people, because I saw pictures from the Command Fest. People were just having a great time. Like, you see the smiles on everyone's faces, and to me, it's so great to be able to bring that out with this kind of social play.
Well, you're just making me wish I had made it to the one this year.
Well, there's Command Fest DCs right around the corner, so
yeah.
I'm waiting to be invited.
I got next year.
Jason's
holding out for that invite.
That sweet invite. If everybody else gets sick.
I don't know if there's going to be or not, but I am trying to see if we can also get mystery boosters there. So if you need an extra incentive, no guarantees though. Like, I just got back today from SCG Con, and I was thinking about over the weekend. Those drafts were packed. Like, SCG Con sold out of mystery booster drafts. In fact, it was so much so that on Sunday morning there was a line of people at 8 a.m. when the hall opened. Right, I think I mentioned this earlier to try and play it.
Yeah.
And so there's clearly demand for it, and clearly a lot of Commander players want to have access to the cards. So no guarantees. We're going to see if I can get them there, and if not for this one, maybe we can get them for any Command Fest we do next year.
Yeah. All right. Well,
sounds excellent.
I think we've hit on all the topics we had planned, at least. DJ, Jason, is there anything else we want to ask Gavin before we close out tonight?
Can't you say we both won the bet?
Everyone's a winner.
This is a particularly, I would say, hot episode of Brainstorm Brewery. Just to saying the word hot for no particular reason.
Yeah,
I was really
winners,
hoping this would be similar to the chip, but apparently it's 5 times hotter than the chip we did. So
the winners are the rest of us who get to enjoy this. So,
yeah, Corbin never shows up to episodes. So
yeah, are you guys ready?
Corbin
I'm
doesn't
not going to
eat
put this
chips
off by insulting
anyway.
me. I'm ready.
Corbin doesn't eat chips. You think he'd eat a gummy bear?
Yeah, I'm not ready. I got to go upstairs and get some stuff, and I got to start a recording. But since we had a very, very, very special guest tonight, you'll notice that we didn't do on the podcast Pick of the Week or Breaking Bulk. Don't worry, if you are a patron who goes to patreon.com/Brainstorm Brewery and gives us $10 a month, which is $2 or $2.50 per episode, you have access to our spreadsheet where on Monday night when we recorded the cast, you got the Pick of the Week and the Breaking Bulk right there in the spreadsheet. We don't always do it on special episodes, but that is something we still do put in the spreadsheet to give our patrons a little bit of extra value. So if that's something you think you would like access to, patreon.com/Brainstorm Brewery is the place you go.
All right. And we want to thank, as always, our sponsor, Channel Fireball. Black Friday is coming up. There's going to be a Black Friday sale on Channel Fireball. Go figure. It's going to be big savings. I believe it's 20% off of orders there. So it's going to be a bunch of nice stuff picked by the Team CFB. So make sure to go check that out, everybody.
And you won't get trampled by other shoppers if you shop online. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm sure we'll have some good after hours content once we get the Black Friday stories rolling in of people getting, steamrolled for whatever. I don't know what the hot toy is this year.
It's Brawl Decks, man.
It's Brawl
Nice.
Decks, yeah.
My work is done here.
Well, Gavin, thank you again for coming on, man. Where can people find you, reach out to you on the internet, give you more
Where can
feedback,
people
tell you how much
complain to
they
you?
love 'em?
Where can people
come on.
Well,
it's no complaining.
I mean, I am everywhere, but Twitter is always, I think, probably the best place to hit me up. It's the one I'm going to most likely just see and reply to quickly. But beyond that, Tumblr, Instagram, email, Facebook. Like, if you search and you see my name, you can probably Reddit is a good place to post stuff. And I know there's been plenty of hot button topics running around Magic recently. I super appreciate our community and how they always give us feedback. So thank you all so much. I super, super appreciate it. And know that we're trying to make our future products better because of all the stuff you tell us. So as the guy who makes these products, I really appreciate it. And I hope you're excited for the next year of Commander, because I certainly am. And I think it's going to be awesome.
Well, I have to buy all this stuff, so. I feel like this. Look at all the stuff, and everyone's like, I gotta sell plasma now. If you follow the finance tips from this podcast, you'll find that not only can you afford to buy all the Commander stuff you want, you can give us some of that money back at patreon.com/Brainstorm Brewery. Boom.
Give us your plasma.
Or just send us your plasma.
All right, everybody. This is Brainstorm Brewery. Thank you for listening. You don't have to stick around, but if you do, it's going to involve some pain from DJ and Jason as they eat these gummies. So hopefully we'll see you there. If not, we'll see you next week.
Can I say one more thing?
You
I
can.
just want to say one more thing about next year and the next couple years of Magic. We're gonna keep trying out new things, and I really want to stress that I think as we try out these new things, in many cases, playing is believing. So I know when a set list comes out, you might think one thing, or you hear about some weird new ancillary product we made, like Mystery Booster is a great example, and you're like, huh, what? Why would I want this? I just like any Magic player, I appreciate jumping to conclusions as much as the next person, but definitely try and give some of these things a try, because with Mystery Booster being a great example, there are a lot of people who are like, isn't this a bunch of reprints? Why would I want that? Who have become like, wow, this is the greatest draft format I've ever played. I mean, I saw that happen with many people at Richmond and at SCGCon. People could not stop coming up to me and telling me about how it was their favorite format, one of their favorite formats of all time, if not their favorite. So as we continue to do more and more unusual things, as you try out Commander Legends draft experience, as you try out all kinds of stuff, or as you hear about all kinds of stuff, make sure to give it a try. And I always appreciate feedback, but I always appreciate it even more if the feedback is, hey, I tried this thing out, here's my feedback, as opposed to, I read it on the internet and here's my feedback. So all feedback is welcome, but if you've played it, it really means a lot. So thank you all to have tried it out, and hopefully soon you'll have a chance to try out Mystery Booster as well. It's been a big hit so far.
Anyways, all right, everybody. Thanks for contributing to the Patreon. Good way to be a good sport, guys. See you later.
And I've been recording this whole time, so hooray. Hi, editor. Thank you for your hard work.
Don't validate the editor.
No, the editor is the hardest working person.
Oh God! Don't
come on.
The great thing about this is when you call the editor, they edit you to make sure you sound good. So I see you, editor. I see what's going on.
That's disgusting.